everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yes, indeed. Donald Trump says, I am the smartest guy on the planet. And if you don't believe it, just ask me. Oh, God, it gets worse and worse. Hey, hello, everybody. On a Thursday, October 26th. How about it? Great to see you today, and welcome. Welcome to the Bill Press Show. We are in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Yeah, that's where we start, but we're wherever you are. We're right there alongside of you in this great land of ours, coast to coast, north, south, east, west. We're there with you and to bring you the news of the day. What's happening here on Capitol Hill, what's happening down at the White House, around the rest of the country, and around the globe, with lots of opportunities for you to weigh in and tell us what you think about it all. Yes, indeed, Donald Trump telling reporters yesterday, another one of those impromptu news conferences. He hates the media, but every time he sees a reporter, he can't help himself running over to say, don't you love me, don't you love me, and let me tell you whatever, I'll tell you how great I am, and you can ask me any question that you want. He went like 15 minutes in an unplanned back and forth with the media yesterday. We'll tell you all about that. Meanwhile, the latest Fox News poll shows that Donald Trump's approval rating is a whopping 38%, lowest it's ever been in any Fox News poll. All kinds of stuff coming up. Tell us what you think about the news of the day. Come on, your chance to weigh in. Do so on Twitter at BP Show. But first,
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We always start these days. Baseball fever.
oh, yeah.
Catch it. Last night, hell of a game. This is shaping up to be quite the series between the Houston Astros and the L.A. Dodgers.
Like 8 hours?
Yeah, it was a long game.
No, really?
Well, going into the 8th inning, the Dodgers were up 3-1. Top of the 8th inning, Houston scores. Top of the 9th inning, Houston scores, which means they went to extra innings last night. After Houston put 2 runs on the board in the 10th inning, the Dodgers answered with 2 runs of their own in the bottom of the 10th. Houston then
These home runs? I heard there was a lot of home runs.
There were a lot of home runs. A couple of these were home runs, I should point out. Top of the 11th inning, Houston scores 2 more runs, and the Dodgers could only score 1 in the bottom of the 11th, which means that the Houston Astros have tied the series up 1 game apiece. 7-6 is the final score as we went to extra innings.
What a game.
Look, these, for the first time ever, these are 2 teams that have 100 regular season wins that made it to the World Series. It's the first time it's ever happened.
Did you see the first pitch?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I've never seen a better first pitch. I mean, so they brought out Vin Scully, right? Dodgers announcer, who retired last year. He didn't work this season. That everybody thought he was going to throw out the first pitch. He did this whole routine. He was so good. And then, of course, he handed it off to someone who could actually throw the ball.
Yeah, Vin, I don't think Vin
Members of the 1981 LA Dodgers championship team.
Oh.
So, very cool moment.
Yeah.
Well, we hear more and more stories of men acting inappropriately. Now, of course, in our business and media, there are going to be a lot of those stories coming out more and more. The most recent,
Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes.
Sure. Well, the most recent one is Mark Halperin. Mark Halperin is taking a little break because 5 women have come forward with allegations that Mark Halperin has sexually harassed them during his time at ABC News.
Duh.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, but duh.
This is something that's been out there for a while. These are accusations that have been out there for a while.
He's been away from ABC for like 10 years now.
He's been away from ABC for a while. He's
Yeah.
pretty much exclusively on MSNBC, and then he has his books. But he actually issued a statement, apologized for his actions, says he is going to take a, quote, step back from his daily work to properly deal with the situation. He says, quote, during this period, I did pursue relationships with women that I worked with, including some junior to me. I won't get into all of the allegations, but they are not good.
No, they're pretty graphic. They're pretty, pretty disgusting.
I would love never to see him again
Yeah,
on my television.
yeah, agree.
I don't think you will this morning.
No.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Did I tell you how smart I am yet today? Oh, I am one of the smartest people that ever lived. In fact, the smartest person alive today. I didn't say that. Donald Trump said that yesterday. Well, he almost said exactly that. Unbelievable. Pointing to said, yeah, right up here. I got it right up here. Just ask me how smart. After all, I went to an Ivy League school, and my name is Donald Trump. Hello, everybody. What do you say? It's Thursday, October 26th, and this is the Bill Press Show. So good to have you with us as we come to you live from our nation's capital and join you everywhere in this great country of ours. We are there with you on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. On Free Speech TV, we're looking at you, and you're looking at us. And out in Chicago on the great WCPT, Progressive Voice of Chicago, the greater Chicago area. Indiana Talks, we're there with you as well in Indiana. And so thank you so much for being part of the program. Anything you missed during the day, go to our podcast. You can find at BillPressShow.com. Where do we start? Let's start with the latest not good news for Donald Trump. Even Fox News has to admit now that his approval rating is falling. Just about every month it goes down. This is the lowest that's ever been in the Fox News report. 38%, according to the latest Fox News poll, believe that Donald Trump is doing a good job. 38% approval rating. 57% of all Americans disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. It gets and among independents, Donald Trump has a 30% approval rating, 38% overall, 30% only among independents. And remember, independents were a big chunk of Donald Trump's winning margin over Hillary Clinton because they wanted somebody who was going to, quote unquote, drain the swamp. Our good friend Steve Shepard from Politico is out with another poll this morning, a Politico Morning Consult poll, which also looks at some of the behavior traits or character traits of the president. And that poll doesn't have much good news in it for Donald Trump either. 56% of Americans define Donald Trump or characterize him as reckless, not smart, not careful, reckless, 56%. By the way, that's the word that Jeff Flake used, of course, in his retirement speech, calling the president reckless. 51% say Donald Trump is dishonest. Not something you want people to believe about the president, your president. Dishonest, 51%. And 53% of Americans in the Politico Morning Consult poll say he is not trustworthy. So reckless, dishonest, and untrustworthy, sort of summing up Donald Trump. But the thing that I find really remarkable and troubling and curious is, with all that bad news, if you just look, so 30% of independents only approve of Donald Trump. And with Democrats, it's like 10% or something. But you look at Republicans, this is back to the Fox News poll, and the Politico poll is just about the same. 83% of Republicans approve of Donald Trump as president. I mean, what the hell is going on? 83% of Republicans. And it helps you understand why John McCain's got his own problem, health problems, but it helps you understand why Jeff Flake and Bob Corker are both quitting, because they see Republican Party is now the Donald Trump party. It looks like it. It's not the George W. Bush party, and it's not the Bob Corker, Jeff Flake party. It's not the Ronald Reagan party. If 83%, how can 83% of Republicans after that primary, right, even, and certainly after 10 months of the Trump presidency, 83. How can 83% look at this man and what he's done and what he says and how he comports himself and the language he uses and the way he treats people and the way he lies every day, and 83% look at them and said, "He's my man"? Isn't that crazy? I mean, what's happened to these people? They can't believe this is good for the party, and they can't believe it's good for the country. 83%. Jesus, come to your senses.
It just kind of highlights something we've talked about a couple of times this week, that it's just everybody's, it's such a knee jerk, right? Like, it's all about whether or not you have the R or the D behind your name, or whether your family has voted R or D their entire life. There are people who are just willing to give Donald Trump a pass because, well, he's going to get this very conservative legislation through, which he hasn't been able to do yet, of course. But
I think it's almost a reflection of The Apprentice. You know, I mean, look, he wouldn't be where he is today if he didn't do that TV show, right? People love a celebrity. And I think maybe it's the point that they just see that Donald Trump is getting all this news, all this attention. He's a Republican, and everybody's talking about him, and he insults the president of North Korea, and he's basically stirring things up in Washington, D.C., and they like that. And again, you know, as you say, Peter, after all, he's our guy. He's a Republican. But, boy, you would think that a little higher percentage of them would be saying, well, he may be a Republican, but, you know, pretty hard to take, pretty embarrassing. Yeah. And by the way, no more so than yesterday with this incredible. So the president going down to Dallas to get some kind of a hurricane briefing, and he's walking out to Marine One. I mean, I've been there many times when the president's walking out to Marine One. Not this one so much. So what happens is those in the media, we're allowed out there, and we stand on the sidewalk at the edge of the South Lawn, and Marine One is out there, and the president walks out of the Oval Office, or he walks out of the White House proper, walks across the lawn, people shout questions, and the president, this is the way it traditionally worked, and the president just ignores the questions, walks along, usually by himself, and the aides kind of follow. And he goes up and salutes the Marine who's waiting there at the helicopter, and he boards the helicopter. Then the others board. Then they close the doors. The blades start turning, and the thing takes off. Okay. No, Donald Trump, he sees the scrum of reporters standing there. And the fake news, he hates them. He attacks them. But, you know, he just thrives on them. He loves us. He wants us to be writing about him. He wants to talk about us. He wants to get his picture on television. And so he goes over to the waiting reporters yesterday and just starts taking questions, impromptu. They were not told.
I want to warn you guys. If you're eating breakfast or you're drinking coffee, put your breakfast and your coffee down for a second while we go through these clips, because it's unbelievable.
I can't guarantee that I will not completely destroy the studio while we play these clips.
Yeah, right.
Just a warning.
So where do we start? Well, I got to start with my favorite one. So he goes on, so he just takes questions on everything and says all this stuff. Of course, we'll start it with Jeff Flake, right? He said, of course, Flake's a loser, and so goodbye, good riddance.
His poll numbers in Arizona are so low that he couldn't win, and I don't blame him for leaving. I think he did the right thing for himself.
Just kicking him while he's down one more time. So, of course, I lashed back at the Congresswoman, Frederica Wilson. I lashed back at Bob Corker. He said, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think it's always okay when somebody says something about you that's false. I think it's always okay to counterpunch or to fight back.
Yeah. How about when people say something that's true?
It's totally provably true.
Provably true, Donald Trump, right. And plus, again, as some people said, for the President of the United States you don't have to behave like a schoolyard bully or a schoolyard baby. Teacher, he called me. I don't know, whatever. It's just you didn't expect any grown-up, particularly the President of the United States, to be able to swing with it a little bit more calmly than Donald Trump does. And then again, he's got to go back and prove that he was right when he made that telephone call. No need for an apology. And he said, I know I got the guy's name right.
I certainly respect LaDavid, who I, by the way, called LaDavid right from the beginning. Just so you understand, they put a chart in front. LaDavid. It says LaDavid Johnson.
No, he said your guy. Your guy.
Which has been backed up by a couple of sources. Backed
up by the congresswoman who was listening on the speakerphone, as was everybody else in the car. It's certainly what Sergeant LaDavid's widow says, and what the aunt, who was kind of the surrogate mother, raised Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, said as well. President just refuses to back down from that. And, of course, he says, I was the ultimate gentleman when I called her.
I was extremely nice to her. She sounds like a lovely lady. I've never seen her. I've never met her, but she sounds like a lovely lady.
The way he just puts people down like that is so disgusting.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Right, yeah. And then finally, here's my favorite clip of the day. Yes, and so it's my memory versus hers, but I'm the one you should believe because I'm so freaking smart.
I think the press makes me more uncivil than I am. People don't understand. I went to an Ivy League college. I was a nice student. I did very well. I'm a very intelligent person.
Can we just play that again?
By the way, he's pointing to his head.
Yeah.
And he says, my memory, he went on to say, I've got the greatest memory and everything. Yeah. No,
I just want to hear that again. It's every one of us in our lives has come across that one a-hole who thinks that he's smarter than everybody. And by the way, he'll tell you that he's smarter than everybody.
People don't understand. I went to an Ivy League college. I was a nice student. I did very well. I'm a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
I got a gold star on my homework. I got a cookie in my lunchbox.
Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, went to Harvard, too. It doesn't matter where you went to school.
It's just the fact that he has a need to say that is what's so frightening, right?
He's an idiot.
He is so insecure, ultimately insecure. And, I just wish somebody around there would remind him, hey, dude, you're president of the United States, okay? It doesn't get any better than this. You don't have to keep groping and grabbing and trying to get more recognition and try to get higher. I want you to take people to take you more seriously. You're already president of the United States.
How am I doing? Am I doing okay? I'm president. Hey, I'm president.
Yeah.
Can you believe it, right?
Yeah. There he is. Unbelievable.
I still can't believe it, by the way, especially when we have moments like this.
I know.
When he gives these rambling press conferences and feels like he needs to point to his tiny little brain to try to convince us
how smart he is.
And that the American people made the right decision by electing him president of the United States. Are you kidding me?
No. Unbelievable. That's just the beginning of Donald Trump's comments yesterday. He also got into, I wanted to talk about this because there's something going on here, which is, of course, ever since the beginning, Donald Trump has been trying to undermine the Russian investigation, right? He tried to get James Comey to drop it, and Comey wouldn't. So he fired James Comey. So then he ended up with this special counsel, Robert Mueller, continuing that investigation and adding an investigation into obstruction of justice. Plus, there are those half-ass attempts on the part of the House and the Senate Intelligence Committee to look into this, too. Meanwhile, Donald Trump keeps saying, it's all fake news, nothing to it, they should drop it. And by the way, he has yet to acknowledge that the fact, an undeniable fact that the Russian government was interfering in our election was any kind of a problem, or that we should do anything about it. He still has not condemned the fact 17 of our intelligence agencies unanimously agreed that Russia was hacking, interfering in our election, and trying to tilt it toward Donald Trump. Trump is not said anything about that, but he keeps doing whatever he can to undermine those efforts and to convince everybody there's nothing to it. No collusion, no obstruction of justice, no meetings, no nothing, no contacts. Of course, he said over and over he never even met Putin, which we know that's a lie as well. Also, the latest is he's got Republicans in Congress, of course, who agree to this strategy. And the latest is they've Devin Nunes, who had stepped down as head of the House Intelligence Committee on the Russian investigation, has now launched 2 new investigations. One of them is into the famous dossier, which was prepared by a former British intelligence officer by the name of Christopher David Steele. And Donald Trump says this dossier, tell you the story about this, but the latest has come out is that the work to complete to put together this dossier was paid for by a law firm, in part by a law firm that was working for the Clinton campaign, and by the DNC. Donald Trump saying yesterday at this impromptu news conference, what a disgrace this was.
It's a disgrace. It's just really it's a very sad commentary on politics in this country.
Yes, right. A disgrace that anybody would be doing any negative research on me.
God.
And he says further that this all started probably during the primary, and then the Democrats took it over in the general.
It might have started with the Republicans early on in the primaries. I think I would know, but let's find out who it is.
It was Jim Gilmore.
Yeah.
Definitely Jim Gilmore.
All right. So just a word on this,
God.
because you're going to be hearing about this. Now they're going to have all these big hearings now, they're calling in the House on this dossier. Okay. They're trying to make a big deal of the fact that now we know it was paid for by the DNC and this law firm. Okay. So I did a little research on this yesterday. This article, the existence of this dossier was first revealed in October 2016. It was prepared by a group in the UK called Fusion GPS, and they hired this former intelligence officer, Christopher David Steele, to do the work. It was David Corn, our friend David Corn, in Rolling Stone, who first wrote about this, the existence of this dossier. And in that article, in that column, his column in Rolling Stone, back in October 2016, he says, quote, that this dossier was, quote, underwritten by Democratic sources. So this is now we know it. The Democratic source was his law firm and the DNC. But the point is, they knew from the beginning that Democratic organization, somebody, had paid to get this dossier done. And what was the dossier? It was Oppo research, they call it. Opposition research on the Republican candidate, namely Donald Trump. Every campaign does opposition research. Ed Gillespie in Virginia has done opposition research on Ralph Northam. Ralph Northam has done opposition research on Ed Gillespie. I'm telling you, I've run campaigns. Everybody does this. This is not new. And the fact that the Democrats paid for it is not new. No. Yeah, Donald Trump was a Republican candidate. So the Republicans, in the primary, they may have done it, but in the general election, there weren't. The question really is, what's in the dossier, and is it true? And what we know about the dossier, and let's forget the personal stuff, okay? Let's forget the hanky-panky alleged in the hotel room with some sexual activities that are bizarre, to say the least. But the other side of the dossier shows that there were many contacts between people around Donald Trump and Russian officials. It also shows that the Kremlin was making business offers to Donald Trump right and left, trying to lure him in and get him to to make some deals there, including an ongoing deal for building a Trump Tower in Moscow. So this contradicts everything that Donald Trump said, that he never had any business deals in Russia and never had anything going with the Kremlin. So the real question is, and I think that's what Robert Mueller, who has interviewed Christopher Steele, the author of this dossier, the real question is, what's in it and is it true? And any effort now to hold these hearings and make a big deal about who paid for it is totally a deflection, trying to deflect and divert interest away from the ongoing Russian investigation. It's the same thing with the uranium. That's the other. They're also going to hold some hearings on this so-called uranium deal. At this impromptu news conference yesterday, Donald Trump talked about that. This is, according to Donald Trump, the worst scandal ever to hit the United States.
Now it's turning out that the hoax has turned around, and you look at what's happened with Russia, and you look at the uranium deal, and you look at the fake dossier, so that's all turned around.
Yeah. So you see what he's saying? Now it's not anymore about do we have any collusion with the Russians. It's about what Hillary did with this uranium deal.
The uranium sale to Russia and the way it was done, so underhanded, with tremendous amounts of money being passed, I actually think that's Watergate modern age.
It is
Watergate modern age.
Modern age.
Thank you.
It is so BS. All right, let me give you the headline on the uranium deal. This is another old thing that they dredged up again. It started out in a book called Clinton Cash. By the way, the Clinton Cash book was funded by a foundation paid for by Robert Mercer, who is the big, after the Koch brothers, that's the latest family putting all the money into the right-wing organization. Yeah. So they say it's terrible that the Trump dossier was paid for by this law firm, the DNC, but it's okay if this other deal was paid for by Robert Mercer. Okay, I'll tell you what I know about this, but before I do, the headline is, PolitiFact looked at this 2 years ago, and they rated it mostly false, right? So they've debunked the entire thing. And what this is all about is there was a company called Uranium One, and under the Obama administration, the Russian government agency, the nuclear agency, was allowed, or the Atomic Energy Agency, whatever, was allowed to buy this Uranium One, which includes some uranium operations in the United States, maybe 11% of the uranium we produce. That deal was approved by 9 different federal agencies. The Committee on Foreign Investment includes representatives of the State Department, the Treasury Department, the Defense Department, the Justice Department, Commerce, Energy, Homeland Security, the U.S. Trade Representative, and the Office of Science and Technology, plus the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the State of Utah Regulatory Commission. And all of them reviewed this business deal, and all of them said, okay, this can go forward. And the person at the State Department who was on this committee said he never talked to Hillary Clinton about it. She probably didn't even know what was going on, and she certainly was not part of the decision-making process. But so you got 11 different government agencies that approved this at the time, and they're all saying, oh, this was Hillary Clinton selling out the uranium. This is the biggest scandal since Watergate. No, it's not. It's ridiculous. But you know what it is, again? It is an attempt to deflect attention from the ongoing Russian Robert Mueller probe and to try to convince all of us that it's all over. We should really be talking about Hillary again and not about Donald Trump and about his collusion and about his contacts with the Russians. I don't think it's going to work, but as long as the Republicans are in charge of the House, they'll hold some hearings. They'll probably have more hearings on her emails.
shame on the Republicans for opening this whole can of worms. Shame on the media for acting like this is a big deal. Shame on any pundit or any columnist who writes something more about Hillary Clinton. As you said, she was the opposition. This is opposition research. I am not shocked that Hillary Clinton tried to dig up
dirt on Donald Trump. No.
Considering that they were opponents in the presidential race. And anybody who acts like this is a scandal or this is bigger than just about anything that Donald Trump has done in his presidency is playing both sidesism, and shame on you.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole attempt, right, to undermine what Robert Mueller is doing and say what we really ought to be talking about is Hillary Clinton. I mean, I said yesterday, if in a certain sense Hillary can't accept the fact that she lost, Donald Trump and his people can't accept the fact that they won.
Yeah.
Sadly, but they did.
Sad.
We have had many, many impressive and important guests on this program in the 12 years that we've been at it. We are about to experience, however, an exciting new first. We have never been able to welcome to the studio a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. She is coming in. Beatrice Fihn is the executive director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, joining us here in studio. Coming up next.
I'm the builder president, remember that, so I understand.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey friends, it's Bill Press here, and I want to tell you about an exciting new venture that we're embarking on here at the Bill Press Show and ask for your help. First, I don't have to tell you, with Donald Trump in the White House, it's more important than ever to keep strong progressive voices out there on the media every single day. But you know what? It's also harder than ever for a couple of reasons. First, because there are so few progressive radio stations. Second, because station owners just won't put progressive voices on the air. And third, because even YouTube won't allow any ads on on commentary, progressive commentary that's in any way political. I mean, you can't even mention the word war without YouTube pulling that ad revenue. And of course, without those ads, without that revenue, we can't raise the money we need to, pay the rent, to pay salaries, to turn on the lights, and keep those strong progressive shows coming your way every day, as we have for the last 12 years. So we've embarked on something new, and we need your help. We've just started putting up all exclusive content on a new platform called Patreon. Now, by becoming a Bill Press Show subscriber for a very low monthly fee, you'll be able to go to Patreon and get exclusive content, newsmaker interviews, political, progressive commentary, political columns that you won't be able to get anywhere else. And pretty soon, you'll be able to enjoy our very special podcast called The Making of Bernie Sanders. And again, it's all on Patreon, Patreon. So please go to Patreon today and sign up, become a subscriber to the Bill Press Show. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we will keep the resistance alive. Together, we will fight back against the destructive policies of Donald Trump, but we can't do it without your help. So please go to Patreon today and sign up. Thank you.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
live video, Bill's commentary, the best clips from the show, all in one place. YouTube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yes, indeed. It is a Thursday, October 26th. Great to see you today, and thanks so much for being with us. Don't forget, we love hearing your comments on the news of the day. These two phony investigations, the latest opened up on the dossier and then the so-called uranium deal. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., brought to you today by the American Federation of Government Employees, those good men and women of the AFGE under President J. David Cox, who keep our federal agencies running day in and day out nationwide. We salute them for their good work and thank them for their support of the program. And so proud to welcome to the studio the executive director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, recognized and honored for its work by the Nobel Peace Prize for 2017, Beatrice Fihn. It's great to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'm so disappointed. I did expect you to come in wearing
we haven't received it yet. It will be awarded in December in a ceremony in Oslo, and I think that then maybe I'll just carry it around, just for
always keep it handy. You're going to want to show that off.
I think it's going to be great to just bring to meetings and just here's me and my Nobel Peace Prize. So let's talk.
The generals wear all the stuff
I know.
on there. Yeah,
right. The peace people should also have this.
Absolutely.
I like accessories, so.
I like that. That would be great. How did you find out?
We got a phone call about 10 minutes before the live press conference in Oslo.
Close to that microphone. Yeah.
He spoke extremely slowly, and I heard a very strong Norwegian accent, and we knew sort of that we'd been nominated, so we were a little bit prepared that it could happen, but it felt extremely unlikely. And then he spoke so slowly. He's like, I'm calling you from Oslo, Norway, with what I hope is good news. And I'm like, just say it. Just say it. And then, of course, really overwhelmed. Fantastic.
Were you by yourself or were you with a group?
I had two colleagues in the office with me who just saw me like jumping up and down and waving at them to turn the music down that they have playing on. So it was pretty hectic. And then we knew that there was going to be a whole invasion of reporters and stuff.
Yeah.
So we had about 10 minutes to just sort of sit down and like, what's going to happen now? But yeah, amazing.
Well, a few years ago, I was I belonged to the White House press corps, and that's when President Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. His first year, that's right, very first year.
That's right.
He had barely taken over, and he got a call early in the morning telling him that he'd won it. So he had a little news conference in the Rose Garden that morning, and I went down there for it. And he was the same. He was just like speechless. He didn't know what to say about it.
Yeah.
And in fact, at the time, he received the prize sort of for anticipate. It was an anticipatory Nobel Peace Prize. He hadn't done anything yet because he hadn't been there long enough. But they were just kind of hoping that he would bring about world peace, I guess, or something.
I think they have all these strategies with the Peace Prize, and I mean, I think he got it in much because of the Prague speech.
Yes.
Which you can obviously be disappointed that it didn't achieve enough results as maybe we had hoped. But it did open up space, I think, to work on this issue. And having the President of the United States, the state with one of the most biggest nuclear arsenals, make that strong commitment to a world without nuclear weapons. I think it kind of helped a lot of the organizations, like our organizations, to work on this issue and not look like a marginalized, radical fringe movement, but something that even the President of the United States supported.
Right.
We might not share exactly how or how fast we should move to this, but I think that speech was important, even if it was just aspirational.
So my understanding is your organization and founded how long ago?
2007.
2007 only, right? 10 years. That's amazing. You have, and your goal is not to reduce the number of nuclear weapons, correct me if I'm wrong, but to ban them entirely, correct?
Well, we think that, of course, we want to, it's to prohibit and eliminate. So we want to achieve the elimination. But we think that looking at other weapons, like biological weapons, chemical weapons, landmine cluster munitions, you have prohibited them first, and then you move to elimination. It's very hard to eliminate a weapon that we still think it's acceptable and legitimate and legal. So you have to kind of work with the normative push first, that we make a commitment that these weapons are unacceptable, they're illegal, and we should move towards their elimination, because that helps reduce the political value of these weapons.
And what success have you had so far in getting nations to agree to that?
Well, quite a lot. We have been involved in negotiations of this treaty, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It was adopted this summer in July at the United Nations with, I think, 122 countries participating.
Whoa.
And then just a few weeks ago, it opened for signature. So now states are able to sign it. I mean, that's a sort of long process that takes a bit of time. But so far, 53 states have signed it, and we're working to get that number up consistently. We think we're going to get over 100 countries. From these 122 countries, we're expecting most of them to be able to sign it soon. And then, of course, working with all those states, including the United States, that hasn't signed it, to make them change their policies anyway. This is a tool, this treaty, not the ultimate goal. We see, for example, with the landmine treaty, that the United States never signed, but it still has affected and made the United States stop using landmines. So we see this as a tool to put pressure on the nuclear armed states.
Of these 53 nations, are any of them members of the nuclear club?
No.
That's the real tough nut to crack, I guess,
Absolutely.
right?
But I think that we can't sit around and wait for the nuclear armed states to suddenly decide. That's not how change happens. You have to force the issue, and you have to rally people around them to say, stop, we don't accept this anymore. Because for a long time, I think the whole world has kind of accepted and just, we're stuck with these nuclear weapons. We can't really do anything about it. But that's not true. We can do something about it. And this is trying to build a very strong movement internationally to make it harder for the nuclear armed states to keep investing money in their nuclear weapons, to keep upgrading them, for example, or make these threats that are going on right now between North Korea and the United States, to really put a lot of pressure that is unacceptable behavior in the international community.
How do you go about convincing a country to sign? Do you meet with their foreign ministers? Do you do, public relations campaigns to get people to sign petitions for the government, or how does it work?
We do pretty much everything. So ICANN is a coalition of organizations. So we're a campaign. We have 468 partner organizations that are NGOs working in about 100 countries. And we have everything from activists that chain themselves to fences of nuclear bases, for example, to almost professional lobbyists that work with parliaments and foreign ministries, and everything in between. So it's a lot about public awareness raising attention to this issue, but also making it very clear to politicians that, especially in democracies, make the decisions that you have a decision here. You can do this or you can do that, and to sort of put pressure on them. So I think it's a lot of different types of work, lots of emailing.
Yeah. No, and crowdsourcing, I guess.
Yeah,
and crowdfunding.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We've used social media a lot to share information, talk to people all the time, trying to rally different constituencies, from environmental group to human rights groups, religious and faith-based communities, for example, to each provide their own perspective on this issue and use their influence to change the government.
Right. Now, I'm old enough to remember a time, you alluded a little to this, what frightens, what I think maybe one of your greatest obstacles is this idea, as you mentioned, that most people today believe that, they're there, we'll never use them, but we can't do anything about them. We're sort of stuck with them, right? This complacency, is that something you're fighting around? Certainly in this country, I believe that's true. Most people today, I don't believe, see the threat of nuclear weapons as one of the greatest
The president certainly doesn't.
greatest dangers facing this country. And at one time we did. During the Cold War, people, duck and cover, right? I mean, the whole campaign. What do you do? People were building nuclear shelters and.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been since the end of the Cold War. People kind of forgot about nuclear weapons and thought that it wasn't a problem anymore. But I think we're seeing now a huge sort of increase in awareness, and people are scared. But I think it's very important that you can't make nuclear weapons into an issue that paralyzes you, because the consequences are so awful and so widespreading, both in sort of space. It can spread to other countries. But also in time, it can impact generations to come if they're used. But I think you have to also remember that we built these weapons. We can take them apart, and we can control them. I sometimes get the feeling that people talk about nuclear weapons almost like a natural disaster, that it's an act of God or something, that it would just happen. We can't do it. An asteroid can strike Earth and we all be doomed. But it's not. It's just a weapon. And I think we've made them into something that it isn't, like a much of a bigger symbolic power tool that reflects the whole sort of situation in the world. But it's just a weapon, and we can control them, and we can do something about it. And I think that now we have a huge opportunity in the world to, again, rally people to do something, because we left this issue. We thought that it wasn't a problem anymore. But whether or not you believe in deterrence and think that that's a good idea and that it keeps you safe, if we keep nuclear weapons forever, they will be used by accident or intent. And the consequences would be devastating. And emergency relief agencies like the Red Cross, for example, or the UN humanitarian system, they say we can't do anything to help. We can't even treat the wounded because of the radiation. So we just have to pull our stuff out and let everyone suffer and die on their own, in a way. So I think it's really... We have to stop that before it happens, and we can stop it.
And this work is so important. What is the status of nuclear weapons today? I mean, roughly, how many are there, and who's got them?
So there is about 15,000 nuclear weapons still. Many of them are bigger than the Hiroshima bomb, Nagasaki bombs.
Yeah.
And the cities today look completely different, so the impact would be much more devastating. And I think over 200,000 people died in those two attacks.
So 15,000, each one of them is bigger than the...
Not each one of them, but sort of average. Some of them are enormous, of course, and some of them are a little bit smaller, but the average size is bigger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there's this organization here in the U.S., the Union of Concerned Scientists, that did this great sort of visualization of U.S. nuclear arsenals. And this is just the U.S., 1 out of 9. And on one nuclear-armed submarine, you have the explosive TNT of the nuclear weapons, equivalent of, the explosiveness of 7 World War IIs.
Whoa, on one
submarine. And there's 10 of them patrolling constantly. And 60 million people died in World War II? I think.
Sounds dangerous. Yeah.
It's pretty dangerous. And they are down deep in the sea, and they can be an accident. We had a UK and French nuclear submarines that collided in the French Channel and the English Channel. There can be, it can be all these kind of accidents, miscalculations. And we see with North Korea and the United States right now, when the rhetoric is triggering, actions can follow. It doesn't mean that they're going to be used, but something could go wrong. And the more you raise the alert level and the preparedness to use them, the easier it is that something happens. So I think it's really an urgent threat, and it's something that we don't really feel comfortable thinking about the consequences of, but it is absolutely horrific and would violate all laws of war that we've developed.
And how many countries that we know of? Some don't admit that they've got them, but we know they've got them, like Israel.
Yeah. So 9 countries. It's the United States, Russia, China, France, and the UK. And then India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea.
So you do put North Korea on that list.
Yeah, they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah. This idea that we're going to stop them is really
no.
Realistic.
No. Of course, they can get rid of their nuclear weapons. Other states have, like South Africa, for example, did it. So it's absolutely possible. I'm not going to say that they can't. They can. But right now they do have nuclear weapons, and we can't pretend like they don't.
So South Africa got rid of theirs. Libya, I forget whether they were developing or they already had them.
No, they had a program that wasn't finished yet, and also with other weapons of mass destruction. But we also had a couple of the former Soviet republics that had Soviet nuclear weapons, like Ukraine and Belarus and those. They gave them back to Russia when they separated from them.
And isn't there also, so these 15,000 weapons exist, but isn't there also a lot of nuclear material left over from the Cold War that's just kind of hanging out there?
Absolutely. It's the more nuclear weapons we have and the more sort of production of it, the higher likelihood that there's an attack on a facility like that, or that there's theft of material. So I think it's also a huge security concern, the existing nuclear weapons, for the people in the country where they are. If you live next to a nuclear base, for example, you're also vulnerable for accidents or attacks on that base. So they're not just protecting you, they're also increasing the threat for you.
So what can people do? And what do you ask people? I guess it differs from country to country.
Yeah.
But let's talk about right here in the United States. We are with Russia, right? One of the countries that has this excessive supply, right, of nuclear weapons. Reportedly, Donald Trump wanted to increase our arsenal by 10 times. But short of that, even under Barack Obama, we've allocated, I forget how many billions of dollars.
Enormous amounts.
Right, to modernize our, why, right?
Exactly. I mean, this is a weapon that almost everyone agrees is a bad weapon. They shouldn't be used. They don't really fit modern day threats. They can't fight terrorism. They can't fight climate change, organized crime. It's hugely expensive and a huge security risk to the people of the country. So I think it's people need to first believe that you can do something about it. I think it's a lot of it's a lot of emotions around nuclear weapons. It's probably the most emotional weapon there is, because there's so much feelings attached to it and just cultural associations rather than practical impact. They're almost impossible to use in conflict. They're not very good weapons. If you look at the military and what weapons they actually want and use, it's sort of high technology weapon, precision guidance, fully autonomous weapons.
Yeah.
It's not leveling an entire city full of civilians. That is not modern day warfare today.
Right. So it's interesting in the sense that they become almost obsolete.
I think
in terms of
absolutely
their use in a military conflict today.
Absolutely. It's not. It wouldn't do the job. I mean, today it's not really acceptable. It's different from 1945. It's not acceptable today to level an entire city of civilians, to indiscriminately slaughter 200,000-300,000 of people. It's not what we do in warfare. It doesn't get the job that you want in a military operation done. So, and because the impact would also, I mean, the kind of the refugee crisis that would be sprung from that, the long-term impact, the impact for survivors and generations, their kids, it would be enormous. If you would, what Donald Trump said, totally destroy North Korea, indicating with nuclear weapons, I mean, that would impact South Korea, that would impact Japan, China. You can't contain that kind of, I mean, aside from the immoral idea of slaughtering an entire people. I mean, that would be absolutely awful just because of that. But also, it's not.
But the radiation would spread through that entire region.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And if you have a nuclear war, I mean, you could also get, it could impact the climate. If you use I think there's research saying that if you use about 100 nuclear weapons in a regional conflict, for example, the dust from those explosions will cover the sun and cool temperatures of the earth, impacting, like reducing crops of rice and corn with 10% over the next decade, causing millions to starve. So I think it's these weapons are not for one country or one person to feel like we are entitled to have this power. It's a global issue, just like climate change, that we can't solve it alone. And it doesn't really, we need to address it now urgently.
Your website is icanw.org?
Yes.
ICANW.org. We should put a link up on our website, and we will. But I want to come back to, so people watching, people listening this morning who really do sense the urgency of this issue may feel it's so big and there's so many of them, there's nothing they can do. Is there something they can do?
There's absolutely many things to do. We have about 460 partner organizations, many of them in the United States. And on our website, you can find which organizations do work in your country and get involved and support those kind of organizations. But you can also do things that we can also remove investments in nuclear weapons production. We have this great report called Don't Bank on the Bomb, which tracks...
Don't bank on the bomb.
Yeah, which tracks where your savings and pensions go, and if they go to nuclear weapons production. And that's also how we work with this treaty. We're trying to now, all the countries that signs this treaty, we're trying to get banks and pension funds in those countries to, now your country prohibited nuclear weapons, which means that you are not allowed to invest in nuclear weapons production, and trying to divest. And we've seen that very effective in campaigns around cluster munitions and landmines, that it puts pressure on the weapons producers as well to stop. And then, of course, call your politicians, call your representatives. There's lots of initiatives here in the United States right now trying to restrict the president's ability to be the only one to be able to authorize the use of nuclear weapons, to, for example, have a no first use policy, that the United States wouldn't be the first country to use nuclear weapons, and to raise awareness about what would actually happen if a nuclear bomb goes off. I think there's plenty of things to do.
Right. So it's ICANW.org. Does the United States not have a no first use policy?
No.
Oh, I thought we did.
You know,
boy, that's disturbing.
Like, as you talk about this, I mean, the one thing that I think is important to remember, we've said this before, is like, I think that we all, as Americans, were sort of lulled into this false sense of security because we had Barack Obama, who's a level-headed guy, and we trusted Barack Obama. But like, there were things we were saying that were like, even though Barack Obama might be, you know, someone that we like, it's not always going to be Barack Obama.
Exactly.
And so now we've got Donald Trump, who has hasn't been president a year, and he's threatened nuclear war. So like, and it could get worse than that.
Absolutely, and it can get worse in other countries.
Sure.
As well. And I think that's the case. We can't say that it's okay that some have these weapons. I mean, you have to make a decision. Are these weapons bad or not?
Right.
Are they good for security or bad for security? If they're good for security, well, then everyone should have them.
Yeah.
But that's not really a great idea either. I think most
No,
people don't think so.
No.
But, I mean, we usually say that there are no right hands for the wrong weapon. And I think that's really a key point. This is not about who is in power at this certain moment in certain countries. This is about we shouldn't have weapons that would violate the laws of war that we already agreed to, that would indiscriminately kill civilians, because we have said that we shouldn't be doing that. That's not the purpose of warfare.
Beatrice Fihn, Executive Director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICANW.org. You're doing such great work. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Nothing more important. Well deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming in.
Thank you.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
How smart am I? Just ask me. I'll tell you. I'm the smartest man on the planet, says Donald Trump, and I got the best memory of anybody. Man, it just gets worse and worse. Hello, everybody. What do you say on the Thursday, October 26th? It is the Bill Press Show. Great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us. We are right here on our studio on Capitol Hill, reaching out to you all across this great land of ours with the news of the day. We'll run you through the headlines of the day, what's going on here in Washington, D.C., around the country and around the globe, and look forward to hearing from you what you think about it all. The big stories of the day, yes, Donald Trump with his impromptu news conference yesterday, telling us how smart he is. The latest Fox News poll, not very good news for the president. This is Fox News, and they can, at best, find only 38% of the American people approve of the job Donald Trump is doing as president of the United States. And House Republicans have decided they're going to try to deflect attention from Robert Mueller's Russian and obstruction of justice probe and start up two probes of their own on that old story about the so-called uranium deal and the Russian dossier, or the dossier on Donald Trump. It all starts coming back. To help us through the hour with the news of the day, Ben Kamisar from The Hill, staff writer for The Hill.
Wait, where's your Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, I know. I left it outside.
Oh, yeah, no, I know how you. Yeah, I don't know. You don't want to show it off. I get that.
Didn't you know this is just the?
I leave for
you
a couple...
either have to have the Légion d'honneur, or the Congressional Medal of Honor, or the Nobel Peace
I
Prize.
was gonna say I've been gone for a couple months, and it seems like the bar just continues to rise in my absence.
No, that's what it is. And yeah, Ben,
Well, stick around.
Very intelligent person.
There he is. Our next guest, Bishop Desmond Tutu. You're warming him up, and you came on after the Nobel.
We've
Peace
worked
Prize.
together for a while.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. This will be nice.
All right. Nice to see you, Ben. Thank you. We'll jump right into it. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Bill, are you hungry?
Yeah, actually, I'm about to jump into my Chobani
yogurt. Well, the story that I have for you features a food that is a little less healthy than your Chobani breakfast.
Okay.
Taco Bell is rolling out a new menu item.
You do so many Taco Bell stories.
I know. No, I know how much he loves when I do these stories.
I won't even walk into one.
They have a new quesadilla called the Kit Kat Chocoladilla.
No.
It is a flour tortilla that they have stuffed with pieces of Kit Kat and grilled so that you get a melty chocolate situation inside of a flour tortilla.
How many times have you walked into Taco Bell and said, "Man, this is great, but I wish there was a Kit Kat in the middle"?
I wish there was a Kit Kat in the middle of this quesadilla.
That's the thing about these Taco Bell stores. They have, like, let's say they have like a good line of basic Mexican food. They always come up with this new stuff that we don't need, don't want.
But if it sells, they'll keep doing it.
No.
I mean, they made taco shells out of Doritos. And it was like a huge thing for them. And now they have these egg taco shells, which is the hardest of
As your bar of guests continues to raise with the Nobel Peace Prize, Taco Bell is racing to the floor.
Do you remember the KFC one with the fried chicken as the patties?
Oh, yeah, the fried chicken was the bread.
Was that the double down?
Yeah, the double down.
My advice is go to District Taco.
There you go.
Get a better deal.
Sure. All right, very quick final story. Many years ago, Albert Einstein had a messenger deliver him something to his hotel room. He didn't have a tip to give the messenger, so he wrote him some life advice. Well, that just went up for auction, and it sold for $1.8 million. If you're wondering what the life advice was, Albert Einstein said, quote, "A calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with constant relentlessness."
Sounds like a fortune cookie.
Worth $1.8 million.
The Albert Einstein fortune cookie.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Yes, I'm the smartest man that walks, and I've got a better memory than anybody that talks, including, of course, and especially the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. Donald Trump, he's just relentless, will not let up, going after her again yesterday in a little impromptu news conference on the South Lawn of the White House. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Thursday, October 26th. Good to have you with us as we reach you and boom out to you and join you coast to coast on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show, on Free Speech TV, and out in the Chicago area on the great WCPT. In studio with us from The Hill, Ben Kamisar, who is a staff writer for The Hill. And I always remind you what a great newspaper The Hill is. For one reason, because they carry my column on Tuesdays. And so, I always have
the synergy here.
That's it. Put in the plug. Ben, how you doing?
Pretty well.
So you've been taking a look at the political landscape is pretty active these days, even though it's an off year, right?
Yeah, no, I was looking to, after the election, look, everyone was, I think, agreeing and kind of looking to take a little bit of a rest, and things just have continued to roll forwards.
Right. And there's been a lot of news this week, of course, about the disarray on the Republican side when you have President George W. Bush, John McCain, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, all kind of jumping off the Trump train. What's happening on the Democratic side of the political aisle, right?
Yeah, well, I think you're still seeing the Democratic Party trying to figure out their own issues. There have been continuous, smaller, side stories popping up about friction that continues to pop up between the more, establishment and progressive wings. It's, similar, but also completely dissimilar if you think about it. And also, you obviously also have a Democratic Party that is in a much worse financial shape than the RNC. If you look, I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but the RNC is massively outraising the Democrats. Tons more cash on hand. So you have a Democratic Party that's still trying to figure out both the message and how to deal with its own internal problems, but also how to, turn things into a fundraising boon and really just catch up to the Republicans too.
Well, so I understand the DNC may be having its fundraising problems. Is that also true of committees like the House Committee to elect, to take back the House, the Senate Committee, the governor's races?
Yeah, so
whatever?
That's been so interesting is that, it's been the opposite. You see Democratic candidates are fundraising very well. You have tons and tons of candidates individually in their own campaigns that are raising very good money to take on Republican incumbents. And you have, both the DCCC and the DSCC are both raising, keeping pace or in some cases surpassing their Republican counterparts. So you have it sort of the problem is sort of the national parties dealing with their own problems, but it's not trickling down. If anything, there seems to be a decent amount of energy for the Democrats as you look down the ticket.
Yeah, but to me, that's understandable in the sense that a lot of people lost any confidence in the DNC after the last run,
Yeah, and it's also an easier sell to say, if you're a voter, I'm concerned, what do I do? Well, here's a candidate, here's a cause, a direct thing I can change, versus the DNC is more of a larger argument that people still are trying to, suss out and get their trust back.
Plus, you had the whole fight over superdelegates, Debbie Wasserman Schultz having to step down, the former chair, before the national convention, because of that whole flap, then the whole hacking thing, and so the DNC got a bad reputation, but well-deserved, I would say, and some people don't have confidence in the DNC coming back that strong under the new leadership, so they're putting their money maybe somewhere else. And some of the, you mentioned the progressive wing, there's an explosion almost of progressive organizations. We've talked to most of them here in studio, but you've got the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, has been around for a while, Our Revolution, Bernie's organization, Indivisible, MoveOn.org, which has been around for a while, but again, showing maybe new energy, ACLU, Emily's List, on and on and on. And how active are they, and what are they up to?
Yeah. They've been starting to, a lot of those groups that you've been naming have been starting to pick their horses in some of these races. As the PCCC, I think, made their endorsements, their first round of endorsements earlier this week, looking at Randy Bryce out in Wisconsin. Iron Stash. I think everyone remembers him from the, both the Twitter feed, his mustache, and also his pretty powerful video that went viral as an announcement. They also
he's been in studio with us. We
love
him. Iron worker. Yes, indeed.
And he's got a primary against Janesville school board member Kathy Myers. He's vastly outraising her, frankly, right now, and is expected to move on to that huge clash against Paul Ryan. And then I think there are two other endorsements that they did. They also backed Andy Kim, former Obama administration official. He's running against Tom MacArthur in New Jersey. If you guys remember Tom MacArthur from the negotiations over health care. So a lot of Democrats are looking to knock him down based off of his role in that. And then the third endorsement they made this week was a more competitive primary in California. It was Katie Porter. She's running in a pretty competitive primary out there too.
Yeah, against Mimi Watts?
Mimi Walters, yes.
Yeah.
It's another district where Clinton did very well last cycle. It's part of, the Democratic push. If they win the majority in 2018, a lot of people think they'll do it through California because there's so many of these districts that Clinton did so well in, and you have these moderate Republicans that may not be willing to, that weren't willing to back Trump in 2016 and may be looking to send him a message. But certainly, I think you'll see California as a big flashpoint in this race.
Well, these are the target districts, aren't they, nationwide?
Yeah.
Where Hillary won the district, but it's now held by a Republican.
23 of them, if I remember correctly. And in one of those seats, in Pete Sessions' seat in Texas, the Democrats didn't even field a challenger. So, even though Clinton won by a couple points, Sessions won by, 80 or whatever.
It's hard to win a district if you don't have anybody on the ballot.
I've heard that.
Yes, right. So for starters. And if there are 23 of those, not that they would win them all, but they'd need a total of 25 to
24, I think.
24, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the path of, you might call it the path of least resistance, but obviously it gets more difficult when you look at, longer, whether people are longer term incumbents and things like that and how the district fits. But certainly those 23 seats are among the, I think, 80 or so that the DCCC is challenging or is looking to challenge in. And
the idea of not having a challenger in that one race, I doubt what happened this time around, because one thing we've heard from particularly Emily's List, Our Revolution as well, is there's no lack of candidates this year. I mean, people are really energized to run more than ever before.
Yeah, and they're doing, there's a lot of them seem to have pretty compelling backgrounds, and at least so Politico did a really good look at House fundraising. There are hundreds of candidates in these competitive districts that are raising substantial money, and obviously money doesn't mean everything, but when you're a little-known candidate in a district and never run before, you got to have a certain amount to be competitive. And it seems like a lot of Democratic candidates running against these incumbents will have the money to be competitive.
Right. And a lot of the energy is coming from the progressive side of the party, if you will, the progressive wing of the party, energized by Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
Get out and run.
And you're going to see these interesting primaries, too. And I wonder, whether... I wonder how those shake out as well, because there are obviously other candidates that, can kind of split the difference between progressives and moderates, and other more moderate candidates running against progressives. So it's going to be interesting to see how, how the voters kind of respond 2 years or less than 2 years after such an important election.
And one of the things I think is really significant is that they're not just groups, again, like Our Revolution particularly, and Nina Turner, the new president of Our Revolution, was in a couple of weeks ago. They're not just focusing on congressional races. They're really looking at state legislative races, city council races. I mean, I saw Bernie Sanders was out the other day endorsing somebody running for mayor somewhere. I mean, even at that level. And they've had some success. They elected, the day Nina was in, they had just elected the new progressive mayor of Birmingham, Alabama.
Mayor Woodfin.
Yeah, right.
It's so interesting to me because, you hear everybody talk about resist, and it's hard to sort of figure out what that means, right, for different people. But, I think it's become clear that states can sort of resist Trump by doing their own thing, right? Like California has shown that they're just not going to go along with a lot of stuff that Trump has said. And Hawaii, I think, when you look at the travel ban stuff, and the courts in Hawaii have said, like, well, no, that's not something we're going to be able to do. So it's those types of roles and those types of positions and offices that are going to have a real impact. Like, if you're a Democrat, you can't vote Donald Trump out yet, but you can certainly send a message to him and say, like, well, where we live, we don't want to go along with your policy. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of, that's why you're seeing a lot of Democratic energy in these, whether it's attorney general races or, or also mayors, but also state attorney generals and also local prosecutors too. You're seeing, those the Philadelphia local prosecutors race. Krasner got a bunch of attention because I think when you look at, you're right, how to take the word resistance and take the, marches and actually turn that stuff into active, policy on the ground, it's through those offices.
Now, so let's go back to the Republican side of the aisle. The Fox News out with a poll today that shows that 38% of Americans approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing as president. That's the lowest that has been in any Fox News poll. You would expect Fox to keep it up as high as they could, but they couldn't. They got that down to 38%. Only 38% of independents think that he's doing a good job. But 83% of Republicans like what Donald Trump is doing. So the Republican Party is now the Trump Party, isn't it?
I mean, I think you saw that with Flake's speech, right? That was his central tenet, or central piece of his speech was, there's no room for me, the kind of conservative that I want to be, in this party. And he said, where I would need to go, to paraphrase, where I would need to go in my primary and my general election to win is a place I don't want to go. So I think you're seeing that was sort of the central thesis statement of Flake's speech a couple days ago. And, when you look at Republican favorability, it's not just nationally. You look down at these states where I follow Senate races a lot for my job, and you look at these states and the numbers are sometimes even higher, 86, 87, 88% among Republicans. So it's this really interesting dynamic in some of these swing states where, sure, Trump's favorability might be eroding among the general population, but it is just fine in a primary, and then that's really going to shape how these primaries shake out too.
Right. I mean, just fine. It's more than just fine. I mean, it's phenomenally strong, right? For any politician to have that 80, 83, 85, 87% approval, right? So, and striking me is how fast this has occurred, because the whole gist of the Republican primary in 2016, from Jeb Bush, from Lindsey Graham, from Chris Christie, from Ted Cruz, is this guy ain't one of us, right? He's not, we may have our differences, but he's in a world of his own, right? And he's not even a Republican, and that's not the Republican Party. Well, boy, look where he is today, and look where the party is today.
And I think
at least the vast masses of Republicans.
I think when you look at polls, though, it's when Trump won, he also did win with low favorability. It's not like he was a candidate even when he won the presidency. There were people who clearly did not approve of him, who would not have checked I approve of him, of his conduct or things like that, but still voted for him anyway. And I think that sort of gets down to, when I talk to Republicans, a lot of what they're saying, a lot of what they believe is that, do we approve of everything that he's done? No. Do we approve of necessarily the some of the tangents that happen? No. But when they look at sort of the bigger picture stuff, they Gorsuch, they continue to point to the Supreme Court, and for them, that's a huge thing. The religious liberty executive order, things like that. That stuff makes it all worth it if you look at if you talk to some Republicans that are much more focused on this big picture.
And tax cuts.
To see how this whole thing shakes out, which is another big open question right now.
So he has in effect taken over the party, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean he's the head of the party. The RNC is the RNC is his political wing. He is the president. I think any president really takes over the party in normal circumstances. But I think it was interesting. It's interesting to see how much of a shift I think there's been since a year ago today, basically.
So I saw Jeff Flake yesterday morning, one of the morning shows, say that he expected other people to stand up, other Republican senators to stand up, pardon me, as he and Bob Corker did, and break with the president. Given those poll numbers, I wonder. I doubt it.
But that 83 in the Republican Party, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a message for those any other Republican senator. If I do what Jeff Flake did, and without resigning, right?
And Flake was down in his primary against a pro-Trump Kelly Ward, who, frankly, a lot of Republicans didn't think was going to be that strong of a challenger. Wasn't lost significantly to John McCain in 2016, but the waters have changed, and all of a sudden, someone who lost to John McCain by a huge margin could now be leading an incumbent senator.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is that, pick a senator, right, Republican, who may be up for re-election this time or the next time. They look at that 83% and they say, if I want to keep my seat, if I want to stay around here, if I want to stay in the Senate, I got to get behind Donald Trump.
And you're seeing these, these 2-person races, these 3-person races. A lot of them in these Senate primaries are a battle to see who is more, who can be the Trump candidate, who is either gets the endorsement of Trump or his supporters, or
who's Trumpier.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like that was what was so interesting in Alabama, right? Like Trump endorsed Big Luther, but Roy Moore ran the Trumpier of the two campaigns. I mean, Roy Moore was Trump in that primary campaign, I think. So I think a lot of people just kind of saw that and was just like, oh, okay, well, we don't have to necessarily go with Trump on this one because Roy Moore is Trump. It's not something everybody can do, but it works for a guy like Roy Moore. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's, Jamie, my favorite clip of the day, if we can. I just love to get your comments. So, covering the White House these days, it's unlike anything we've ever seen before because the president may not have any formal news conferences, but he just loves to sound off any opportunity he has when he sees a group of reporters standing around, as he did yesterday. He's walking out to Marine One on his way down to Dallas, and he has to tell us how smart he is. Right, here he is.
I think the press makes me more uncivil than I am. People don't understand. I went to an Ivy League college. I was a nice student. I did very well. I'm a very intelligent person.
Oh, boy.
I have a great memory. He points to his brain. Right.
I did very well.
I went to an Ivy League college. Ask me how smart I am. I'll tell you. What's going on?
I mean, this is sort of, it's interesting because he gets in these fights with the press, and he certainly, the whole fake news thing, but at his core, he likes talking to us. He's always liked talking to us. And it's just moments like this where you just kind of see that, maybe as everyone, many of his supporters are sort of questioning what they're seeing in the news, and a lot of Republicans are fundraising off of this fake news stuff, at his core, he just likes to chat with the press.
I think the thing that has informed my view of Donald Trump as president the most is, I forgot who said it, but early on, someone just said, Donald Trump doesn't want to be president. Donald Trump wants to be press secretary. Like, Donald Trump wants to meet and greet with the press and also bash the press, but also, this is who he is. He's always played the media.
He's a total creature of the media.
Yeah.
He would not be president without having...
I mean, he was invented by the media, practically.
Right, yeah.
Sure.
Without having his own TV show, and also then the tremendous coverage that he got during the primary. And I think he knows that. I mean, and you're right. What's ironic is the man who attacks the media the most has provided unprecedented access to the media. I mean, Hunter Walker was in from Yahoo News the other day, and just saying, sitting there every day, like at the White House, they see this guy, and he doesn't want to stop talking. His aide, the presidential aides, may eventually try. Hunter told the story about he was in the Oval Office. It was the pool, and Trump started like this, just started taking questions, answering questions, and it went on like for 45 minutes. And the aides were grabbing Hunter and others to try to drag them out of the room, and Trump wouldn't stop talking.
You can't leave while the president's talking. That's rude. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they just kept moving on. So we thought that Trump might have to make a decision in Alabama. I'm sorry, in Arizona, as he did in Alabama, as to which of the candidates he would endorse. But Jeff Flake solved that problem by dropping out. But Steve Bannon is going to be active in other Senate races. Today, Washington Post reports that Mitch McConnell has decided, he and his backers, that they're going to go to declare all-out war on Steve Bannon. But as we know, Bannon is still close to Donald Trump. So what's Trump do? Stay with the incumbents across the board?
Well, it's going to depend on which faction kind of wins out on, the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, because, in a lot of these cases, the incumbent does, if you just look on paper, the incumbent provides the Republican Party the best chance of winning, which also obviously means that it gives him the best chance of having the votes for his agenda. But, at the same time, you have people like Bannon and people, who the president talks to regularly that don't buy that say, what good is having Jeff Flake in office if he's not, if he's going to sit there and spout off against your policies, and even if he's going to vote 90% of the time, it's bad press for you, it's bad coverage for you. So it really does put the president in a bind, in the sense that there's no real great answer here, but at the same time, I wouldn't call it a bind, because it doesn't seem like something that Trump is really, overly concerned about, right?
No, but there may be some cases where he'd rather see, I can see where he'd rather see the challenger. He'd rather see the Bannon person than Mitch McConnell's person.
Oh, for sure. And I think a decent amount of these races left in a vacuum, for sure. It's just going to be an interesting tussle between the argument of electability versus the argument of sort of like true purity, which is always, what this boils down to on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Sasse isn't up this time. I'm just thinking of him I don't believe.
No, he's not.
Right.
But, some of these, it's Deb Fischer in Nebraska and John Barrasso in Wyoming, or some of these, people who would never in any other circumstances get a challenge on the Republican side, but, could have one now. And then it's going to make an interesting, debate between, people in the competing factions of the White House.
Roger Wicker.
This could be such a mess. This could be such a mess. And for all the talk of, like, Democrats in disarray, right? And, like, what a mess the Democratic Party is, right. Which Democrats have plenty of issues they're going to figure out. But this storm brewing for the Republicans, I mean, it was temporarily put off by the fact that Donald Trump won the presidency and they kept the House and the Senate. It looks like things are going rosy and sunny for them, but there's a storm brewing, and it's going to get really nasty.
Look, all hell's going to break loose next week.
That's Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana yesterday, talking to Kate Baldwin on CNN. But I had a call a couple of days ago from your colleague and our friend Amy Parnes, who was writing a story, and she said, I want to talk to you about the disarray in the Democratic Party. And I said, well, Amy, I'll be glad to talk about the disarray in the Democratic Party. I'll gladly admit that both parties are in disarray today. But compared to the disarray in the Republican Party, the Democrats are they look like they're marching in lockstep, right? I mean, there's nothing in the Democratic Party to compare with two United States senators openly breaking with the president of the United States, who happens to be a member of their own party, right?
No, that's it's that stuff. I mean, it's been an unprecedented week, and it's been interesting that both parties have such an opportunity to exploit the other one's sort of disarray, whatever you want to call it. But it's so at the same time they're both going through these growing pains at the exact same time, which sort of the question is, what's the thread that can is there a thread that links the two? And that's this anti-incumbency frustration with national political structure. It's pervasive, and it's working its way through both parties, obviously manifesting itself in different ways.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk next, Ben, to a man who is right in the middle of it, actually on a daily basis, serving Northern Virginia in the United States House of Representatives. Virginia's 8th congressional district, and with a very, very important governor's race in Virginia, of course, heating up more and more every day. Congressman Don Beyer joining us next. And Ben, thanks so much for coming in. Great to see you.
Pleasure. You sandwiched me between a Nobel Peace Prize winner and a member of Congress, but you know.
There it is.
You're the tasty filling of the show, Ben.
It's the Hill. The Hill.
The Kit Kat.
TheHill.com. You can follow Ben and all of his colleagues there, and we'll be taking a quick break. Back with Congressman Don Beyer.
No excuses here. Can't put lipstick on this pig.
Download our podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Being prepared is a part of who you are. But it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even brought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
Same great show, new great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
And here we go, rolling right along, wrapping up, actually, the Bill Press Show for this Thursday, October 26th. From our nation's capital, we reach out to you coast to coast on YouTube, on Free Speech TV, and the greater Chicago area out on WCPT. And we're coming to you from our studio on Capitol Hill, where we're brought to you today by the International Association of Firefighters. Yes, the great men and women of our firefighting departments all across the land under the leadership of President Harold Schaitberger. They are on the front lines protecting American families every day. We salute them for their great work. We depend on them. They never let us down, and we thank them for their support of the program, and proud to welcome back to the studio a good friend from Virginia's 8th Congressional District. That's our end of Virginia, right across the river from Washington, D.C., Congressman Don Beyer. Hey, Congressman, great to see you.
Bill, thank you. Thanks so much for welcoming me back.
It was so good to see you. I'm surprised, though, you're not out walking precincts this morning for Ralph Northam in the governor's race.
Only because it's 8:30 in the morning. But we're down to like 11 days to go. It's pretty close.
No, it really is. And it's, it's kind of building up. So is Donald Trump going to come in and stump for Ed Gillespie?
I hope so. I don't know that. I think Gillespie will be very careful about that. But we had President Obama came to Richmond last week. And apparently the crowd was huge, which was really terrific, and getting people fired up. I saw some interesting statistics the other night from the field side that we have knocked on more doors, made more phone calls, had more canvassers than any race in Virginia history, including Obama 8, Obama 12, or Hillary Clinton in 16.
Whoa, really?
So people are – it's really interesting, Bill, that the size of the Democratic parties, and I don't know the Republican parties, but have more – everyone I've talked to has more than doubled since November 8th last year. That, the number one question at every town hall meeting is, what can I do? How can I fight back? And, of course, one of my answers is, hey, Trump says elections have consequences. They do. Get politically active.
Right. That's it. Pardon me. Well, it's so refreshing to hear that Virginians recognize the importance of this governor's race, that everything is really on the line here, right?
Yeah, in so many ways. And boy, but not just Virginians. We get lots of folks from Maryland. My friend Jamie Raskin, a member of Congress, has been leading Maryland folks across the river to come help, folks from D.C. And the money.
I know a lot of friends from D.C. who've been over volunteering.
We've been really lucky. And we've been talking for a while about how important it is to have Ralph Northam as governor when the redistricting comes up. Yes. We had a Republican governor in 2011, and our General Assembly is incredibly skewed by gerrymandering. We'd like to get away from a gerrymander, back to gerrymander free. But also, the critical 2018 elections are coming up federally, and we know that people will be looking to see what happened in Virginia in 2017 to set the stage for 2018.
Right. Yeah. People are looking here and at New Jersey, although New Jersey is considered kind of pretty one-sided. Are there state legislative races also up in Virginia this year? And I remember talking to Governor Terry McAuliffe that's always been the millstone around his neck, dealing with a conservative Republican controlled legislature.
Yeah. Democrats have won the last 5 statewide elections. And it's basically a 50-50 state. I mean, we don't buy a lot, but 1, 2, 3%. But the legislature, the lower house, is 66-34 Republican because of gerrymandering. Packing African Americans in a handful of districts, things like that. There are court cases going on right now, but we have a pretty good chance of picking up 6, 8, 10 of those seats. Hillary won 17 seats held by Republicans right now, so they're not Republican seats. Always difficult to beat an incumbent, but we'll move in the right direction.
Right. Congressman, there were 2 Republican senators this week, Senator Bob Corker and Senator Jeff Flake, of course, who broke with the President of the United States, who happens to be a member of their own party. They followed very critical comments by former President George W. Bush about Donald Trump, even though he didn't mention him by name, and by Senator John McCain about this phony or false nationalism, nativism, in fact, President Bush called it. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I never have. It's just unprecedented. And Bill, I think...
What's it tell you?
If you could strip away the fear of a primary, the fear of having Breitbart and Bannon come after you, you would get that from dozens more Republican senators and Republican House members. I think the only reason why people are keeping their powder dry on this is because they don't want to get a Trump primary. With Trump at 34% approval, that's still the 34% that shows up in a Republican primary, and that can take out an incumbent. So it's not accidental that Bob Corker's not running again, Jeff Flake's not running again, John McCain's got a very serious illness. People who are not worried about the reelection feel free to say what they really think.
And the latest poll, you point out that it's in the high 30s, maybe mid 30s, his approval rating overall. And yet every one of those polls shows that among Republicans, he's 75, 80%. Among Republicans. The Fox poll, in fact, is 83% of Republicans approve of the job that Donald Trump was doing. I mean, this disparity between the parties has never been.
And what is it among Democrats? 6 or 3 or something crazy?
Maybe 9
what I can't understand, because I've over my life, I've always tried to treat Republicans with respect and try to understand their perspective. It's a fight or a balance or a long thesis and hypothesis between a liberal perspective and a conservative perspective. But with Trump, does so many things that are completely anti-conservative to me. The way he treats women, the disrespect for the Constitution, from freedom of the press, as I say, he does absolutely nothing that my mother would have approved of. And so you see good conservative Republicans are not people. In fact, Republicans are supposed to be the party of people who go to church, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a guy who does nothing that a pastor would bless.
Mm-hmm. Unless your name is Jerry Falwell.
Well,
then he'll bless it.
Yeah, but and the hypocrisy
Jr.
there is
Jr.,
astonishing. Yeah, but the only thing that you can possibly see is if Trump could help their overall agenda, maybe they'd skip all the personal stuff and go with it. But I was just reading this morning this new Pew report on political typology, 5,000 people they've interviewed over a 3-year period of time, and it just points out how incredibly fractured the Republican Party is. From those who think immigration is good to those who think immigration is bad, to those who think gay marriage is okay and those who think gay marriage is bad, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. What do you expect? Some of them, and Mitch McConnell really, in a sense, let the cat out of the bag this week, that they'll accept or tolerate anything that Donald Trump does because they know he'll sign their tax cut bill, right?
Yeah.
What do you expect to see? There'll probably be a House bill first. What do you expect out of this House tax cut bill? What will it mean to working class Americans?
It's going to be terrible. First of all, Bill, my early morning prayer this morning, we have a vote later today in the House on accepting the Republican or the Senate budget.
Oh.
And there's a chance, maybe not a great chance, that we can kill it today. Because there'll be a lot of Republicans. I think there's already 18 Republicans in the House that voted against their version, which was far more fiscally responsible than what the Senate version is. So that'd be the best part. But if we actually get to their tax bill, it's terrible. 80% of the tax benefit, the tax reduction, goes to 1% of the population. 47 million middle-income Americans are going to see their taxes rise. And basically, they're going to strip out a lot of revenue from the system, which is going to give them the argument, hey, we need to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. This is really bad for the American people.
And meanwhile, it just piles more money onto the national debt and the deficit.
Yeah, right? and I don't get yes, tax simplification would be great. Taxes are too complicated. We all agree with that. But do you really need to give the people that are the top earners paying 39.6%, a big cut? I think it's an average that those 1% are going to make $200,000 more per year in what they'll be able to keep of their already high earnings.
Right. I mean, well, it's all still the trickle-down theory, right? That's been disproven over and over again.
And over. It's amazing. I can't cite the guy's name, but he was the author of the tax cuts back in the Reagan years.
Arthur Laffer.
No, not Laffer. Was another guy.
Okay.
Like
right.
Part of the strategy. I remember
the Laffer
that name.
curve,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And he said we never pretended that those tax cuts were going to pay themselves back. That's just nonsense. But the Republicans now have their so-called dynamic scoring that say, it'll create so much more economic activity that'll offset some of it. But even with dynamic scoring, this Republican version now costs almost $3 trillion.
Isn't it funny? I know who you're thinking of as a young guy who later admitted that it was false, that it was phony.
Yeah.
Yeah. wrote a book admitting that everything he told Ronald Reagan that Ronald Reagan bought and swallowed was not true. So there you go. Right. Yeah. But they're still selling it.
They make a big point of the corporations paying have a 35% rate.
Right.
Yeah, you can show the chart that's among the highest rates in the world, but they ignore the fact that the actual rate when you do the math, 14%, and that a quarter of those companies don't pay any taxes at all. I mean, any U.S. corporate taxes. So let's just fix the corporate tax system, and that's not and make it revenue neutral, as Paul Ryan has said from the beginning. But the plan they put on the table is not revenue neutral.
Right. No, I was going to ask you as a businessman, what you thought about this idea. That's the other flip side of it. Part of it is the individual income tax rate, 80% of which, as you said, goes to the top 1%. But then they also want to cut the corporate taxes, saying that that's going to put $4,000 in the pocket of every middle-class family. It's just,
Bill, I've been trying to read everything I can about this, and what it shows is that almost all of that cut in the corporate tax rate is going to go to the shareholders, not the workers.
Yeah.
And I'm nothing wrong with the shareholders, except that basically you're improving corporate profits. And if that were going to flow through to the workers, that'd be a great argument, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Congressman Don Beyer with us from Virginia's 8th Congressional District. So, Congressman, I'm a little confused. We thought that Devin Nunes was so disgraced by proving to be nothing but a little puppet of Donald Trump a few months ago that he recused himself from the Russian investigation. And now he's back this week launching 2 new probes, which he says, that's not the Russian election stuff. This is different or whatever. What's going on?
He can't spell recuse to begin with. It's terrible. And it's so obviously political. So he's out of the Russian Donald Trump notion, but the whole idea of redirecting the public's attention back for some reason to Hillary Clinton. I mean, Hillary, she lost the election, at least the Electoral College part of it. She's not in the news other than her book. This is, let's.
She's not in public office. Yeah. She's not right.
Yeah, let's look at that shiny object over there.
Yeah. That's exactly.
That's what it is, right? That's what they're trying to do. On the 2 investigations, one on this dossier, which was just opposition research, basically. Campaigns on both sides have been doing opposition research forever and ever and ever. It's I think candidate Trump made it a little more interesting because he did have all these these Russian connections. Normally they look back to see what's happening in your hometown. Right.
What did you do in high school?
Yeah. To me, the question is not who paid for this dossier, but what's in it, and is it true?
Yeah, exactly right. That's a good way to once again deflect attention. Let's have a debate about who paid for it rather than what the reality of golden showers is.
Now, it really is fascinating to me that the media will grab onto anything that they can still beat up on Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump certainly does it as well. I mean, opposition research, how is this a story? I really don't understand how they're grabbing at this and making this into such a big deal.
Well, it was when I first started running it about 3-4 years ago. One of the very first things my new campaign manager said is, well, we have to go do some opposition research. And I said, I don't really want to do opposition research on the other guys. And they said, no, on you. Well, let's figure out what they're going to say about you.
Yeah.
By the way, no, that's a good point. I hadn't mentioned that earlier, that I remember as a candidate, too. Yeah, my campaign manager said the same thing. I need to know everything about you, right?
Yeah.
Good and bad. I want to know it. I don't know surprises, right? Right now.
There was a candidate, a Democratic candidate in California, who's, I'll be polite, not use his name, who we talked to about running in 2016. And we said, any skeletons in the closet? He said, no, perfect Boy Scout. Then he runs, and it turns out all these domestic violence things and the bankruptcies.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we learned a lot about Donald Trump yesterday, Congressman, because he talked to reporters on his way out to Marine One, and one of the things he had to tell us is how smart he is. Here he is.
I think the press makes me more uncivil than I am. You know, people don't understand. I went to an Ivy League college. I was a nice student. I did very well. I'm a very intelligent person.
It reminds me of Senator Scott from Virginia all those years ago, who some magazine proclaimed that he was the dumbest member of the U.S. Senate, and then he had a press conference the next day to deny it. It seems to me you should never be bragging about your SAT scores, and in fact, there was a story last week, but one of his Wharton professors said he's the worst student he ever had. So, but we don't want to get in that debate. I mean, we should see his intelligence or lack of intelligence and the kind of leadership that he provides.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And then this is not so long ago that he said we have should have an IQ test between him and Tillerson, was it?
Yeah, Tillerson. Yeah, because Tillerson called him a moron.
His secretary, that's right.
An expletive delivery.
Effing moron.
Effing moron, right.
Yeah, and then Mensa, I guess, came forward and said they'd write the IQ test. Well, I've been the unofficial captain of the Congressional spelling team, the last 2 years.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Well, I won it 2 years ago, and I got out quickly last year, and I got out this year on the word Kaskakwim. Or something, some darned Alaskan river. But anyway, but I recruited Democrats and Republicans, men and women, to be part of it. Maybe next year I should recruit Donald Trump. What do you think?
I wouldn't, because
he's very smart.
Yes, but you know how he spells little.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, right.
That's true. Yeah. And at least there's no grammar in the spelling test.
Yeah, right.
No,
with two D's. All right.
Wait, I think we buried the lead here. There's a Congressional spelling bee.
Yeah. The national Scripps that does the national spell. Well, they do one for the press versus the members of Congress every year in September. It's over at the National Press Club. It gets 400 people live on C-SPAN. It's really hysterical. You'll appreciate this. This year we had some really good spellers. Jamie Raskin and Virginia Fox and Ted Deutsch and really nice folks. But these are members of Congress, politicians who have given thousands of speeches. Sometimes in crowds of. The most frightened I've ever seen them is on that stage, getting ready to be asked how to spell apostasy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The problem with those, I won a spelling bee. I forget, high school, I think, maybe grade school. But the problem, and then I also have lost others. But some of the words that they ask you to spell, and when you see these poor kids every year at that National Spelling Bee, the words at the end of spelling, win or lose on, are words that none of us have ever heard of before, right?
Yeah,
would never use. And
they had last year's winner, who's a reporter at I forget. I'll remember in a minute. Against the young woman who had won, the 13-year-old, whatever.
Yeah.
And they had a face-off, and he did great for the first 10 words. They get progressively harder. She just ripped through 25 words, and she didn't even hesitate. I mean, it wasn't like she was trying to figure out how to spell it. She knew how to spell every one.
I don't want to pat myself on the back here, but I am the former state spelling bee champion for South Carolina, which is South Carolina. So, but I went out on the word shellac. I lost on the word shellac.
You put a K at the end?
I put a K at the end. CK at the end. There's no K at the end.
Poor Jamie Raskin got out. He put a T at the end of Pinot Grigio. And in his defense, he's a teetotaler.
Oh, so, okay. Well, there you go. At least he's got that.
You mentioned, and I know this is an issue you've been working on, I want to come back to. You mentioned gerrymander in terms of that's how we got the Virginia House of Representatives we have today. What's the answer?
Well, I'm very fond of the Fair Representation Act, which people like Rob Ritchie and Cynthia Terrell have been working on for 25 years. If you'll forgive me, and your listeners will forgive me for being nerdy for a minute.
Okay.
There's this French political scientist, Duverger, who's pointed out that single-member districts with plurality voting, first past the post, inevitably lead to highly polarized two-party systems, which is exactly what we have. There's virtually no overlap in the middle. So our solution is let's go back to multi-member districts like we had in the U.S. till 1843. Nothing in the Constitution mandates single-member districts. So Virginia would have a couple of big three-member districts, one for Northern Virginia, one for Hampton Roads, one for Richmond, and then ranked choice voting. So if there are 3 people on the ballot, you vote 1, 2, and 3. So that largely gets rid of gerrymandering, which is really good. You'll get double the number of women in the Congress, which would be really good. You know, if you look now at the Republican half of the House, it's all middle-aged white men. And if you're going to nominate them one district at a time, you know, often a middle-aged white man's going to get it. But if you have to put a slate up of 3 or a 5, you're more likely to put women on, you're more likely to put people of color on. Both parties will do that. And the ranked choice voting means that places like, well, let me pick a Democratic version. Massachusetts has, I think, 9 members of Congress. And the state's 36 to 40% Republican. They have a Republican governor right now. We haven't elected a Republican member of the House in decades. With ranked choice voting, you'd probably have 4 3-member districts, and they'd be 3 and 2, or 3 3-member districts. They'd be 2 Democrats and a Republican, 2 and 1, 2 and 1. Basically, if you're a Republican in Massachusetts right now, your vote doesn't count. But if you're a Democrat in Oklahoma or Kansas or Nebraska, your vote doesn't count either. So we would start to pick up folks there too.
You would have to do it, however, state by state, correct?
No, actually you can, because it's a federal election, you can do this with one simple federal bill.
For
just for the House, just for the U.S. House, and of course the Senate doesn't make any difference. And it's not easy because it's big paradigm shift, but it would make a much more functional House. Right now, the dilemma is with so few competitive districts in the country. My seat, for example, you know, it's a 67 to 70% Democratic seat. Our primary, we're all trying to see who's the most liberal to be there. And in a lot of these Republican seats, who's the most conservative? And there's no incentive to work together. Whereas if we have a multi-member district in Northern Virginia, I want people who vote for Barbara Comstock maybe to think about making me their second or third choice and vice versa. So there'd be a tendency to pull people back together. And I think that's a good thing.
If you were sharing your district with 2 or 3 other people, could you be as effective representing your district?
I think so. You know, it'd be more travel. Interestingly, though, my first worry is, do I have to raise more money? You know, I don't want to do that. Well, the cool part about ranked choice voting is you don't want to be the turkey that goes negative. If I'm the one out there running negative ads, nobody's going to put me on their list. Maybe negative ads works in a zero-sum game, you know, black against white, red against green. But when you have multiple choices, as we've seen in lots of primaries, the knucklehead that goes negative always finishes last. You know, the Howard Dean, Dick Gebhardt murder-suicide in Iowa in 2004. So if you take negative campaigning out of it, then all of a sudden the need for a lot of that cash goes away. Because I would bet 2/3 of political spending is spent saying how bad Bill Press is, right? You know.
No, I've never heard of this concept, but it does make a lot of sense.
I'll send you some essays later today.
All right, there you go. I'll be a little nerdy with you. And this ranked choice voting, I like that. I mean, we don't use that anywhere, do we?
Maine just did it. They passed it last because twice now they've elected Paul LePage, who's the Trump version of a governor, with 37% of the vote, when 63% of people didn't want it. And if you'd had ranked choice voting, they would drop the number 3, and his or her votes would roll over to their second choice, which probably wouldn't have been Paul LePage.
No, not Paul LePage, Good work. That's a great thing to work on. I know it'll take a long time. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. Thanks for your good work. All right. Have a great Thursday, folks, and come back and see us.
This is the Bill Press Show.